Session we are going to have just now is very provocatively called Play With Me, and it is a book by Ananth Padmanabhan.
What it reveals, I think, is that there is nothing more difficult in literature than to write about sex. It is something which everyone does, and yet to put it on the page, to make it work, is almost the most difficult thing a writer can choose to do. It's also, of course, one of the bravest things that a writer can do, to put on the page all his secret kinks and perversions. Now, this, of course, is nothing to do with Ananth at all. This is a work of fiction, ladies and gentlemen.
How does anyone approach writing about sex, and how well or badly they handle the language? Because what is your intent first of the author, irrespective of gender? Is it to titillate, or is it to evoke a kind of feeling that transcends and unifies you with the reader, that they understand a feeling? It's not so much about the act, but about the feeling. And when I write about it, that's what I'm trying to do. Also, secondly, the question about whether women, women and men, do they write about sex differently? Well, even in gender, I would be hesitant to just talk about it in terms of men and women, because gender is so fluid, and I've had numerous discussions on this about, I mean, we can't really say men or women, and women write completely differently.
Yes, I think men and women write differently. At one point in the book, Kara talks about how she loses her orgasm for the first time at 13, and she has this lesbian encounter in a college trip, on a school trip. It was difficult to write because I just wanted to also explore where Kara's sexuality came from, for somebody who's so brazen in the book all the time. And it almost reads like Nancy Friday in a way. It's a Nancy Friday confessional in that sense. So that was tough. It's possibly the only time I tried to get into a woman's head to talk about what she felt when she has an orgasm with her class buddy and they're listening to music and stuff. But the only thing I think, when I was writing, I was always conscious, I always wanted to be sure that obviously women read sex differently from how men read it. It's not just about the writing. And I just wanted to be sure that the women come across as, for lack of a better word, that the writing is good, enjoyable, and there's a certain respect in the way the guy treats the woman in the book. So that was the tough part for me all the time. So whenever I close,
women read those parts before you.
The first draft, in fact, the third draft, I sent to 5 people whose judgment I trusted. So there were 4 women and Udayan, who's a friend, colleague, editor. All of them are in publishing. So they all read it. Half of the reactions were similar, half the reactions were distinctly different. People picked. There are 2 women in the character that Siddharth has an affair with, diametrically opposite in context. So some of them picked Kara's voice, some of them picked Nat's voice, and they said this doesn't seem real, or did you really want to intend it that way? So there was a bit of, to be honest, at that point I didn't know how to fix it. It took me time to fix some of those, but if I shut the book, fix some stuff, and before I send it away, I just ask myself again, is how do the women come across? It's not about the guy seeking pleasure at all. I would close the book and say, how do the women feel at the end of it, the women in the book, and then what if somebody read it? How would they feel about it? And how some of the writing in India is always about sexual freedom, liberation, scandalous housewives kind of thing. But there's never been a novel that talks about pleasure for the sake of fun, which is what people do, or people should be doing. So that was the intent. 2 years ago, I had written short fictional erotica, which is just filed away. Nobody's read them. People in the office have read them, and I just kept it away. And then somebody came and said, we've read those, and I think you should try a novel. So Chiki walked up and said, why didn't you try a novel?